Oh, yes. It is the Hardcore Marketing Show. I'm Casey Cheshire, your host for this epic journey. Today's show sponsored by Cheshire Impact on a mission to help you maximize your use of marketing automation and CRM. CheshireImpact.com. Bam. Now, today's guest, I got to tell you, he is a sales leader, an endurance athlete. He's put over 14 years in sales, grinding it out. And you know what? As a sales rep, he was a peak performer. And then he became a sales manager and was still a peak performer, which happens to almost no one. It's a totally different job, and somehow he's like blown them both away. He is now currently the regional vice president at Salesforce. And this guy is passionate about sales management, about developing sales teams, and he's got the secret sauce. So I'm excited to introduce my friend Garner White. How are you, sir?
Thank you. Quite the overdone intro. But thank you.
You deserve it, man.
Yeah, excited to be on here today. I know we've known each other for a couple of years now. First introduced in Atlanta. That was a while ago, but excited to be here today. That was certainly, it feels like forever ago, and it's really not that far.
You're right. And you even reminded me, there's more I could have said in our intro, the fact that we've worked together. I've seen you at work. I've seen your teams at work, and how the customer feels so served versus, some other experiences from other reps, somehow in some way. So anyways, glad you're here, dude.
No, excited. This is a long-time listener, first-time caller to the podcast.
Right?
I know we share some of the same kind of podcast interests, but this is a pretty cool experience.
Yeah, man. Well, happy to just get cranking. And we had that theme we were talking about, and that theme about that roadmap for marketing automation, because we work with a lot of people, and sometimes they, get an implementation, they go right to just, some advanced feature, or they just forget all their training or not think about strategy, and they just go blast people. I'm like, dude, this is not the way to do it. We realized they didn't have a roadmap. So we created one, right? So each month has been a theme. We've talked in January about buyer personas. We had Adele Ravella come in here, talk about that. Talked about reporting one month, nurturing, all sorts of good stuff. And now this is the cool month, because now we get to talk about sales and marketing alignment. We got all these juicy leads. We got to send them over to sales. We're connecting to CRM, Salesforce, right? And then there's a lot of that friction sometimes. So it's all about aligning marketing and sales. And I just want to hand you Thor's hammer. And are there some misconceptions around business or marketing and sales, just the way people are approaching these things that you just want to smash right off the get-go?
Yeah, I mean, I guess to get right into it, we at Salesforce and I in my career have always kind of thought, like, you have a lot of times when people have a project or idea, especially kind of taking that next step into marketing automation, that ideas of grandeur are not the way of kind of explaining it, but this idea of almost doing too much. We here, and we in my career have always kind of thought, I always want to talk to people about kind of crawl, walk, run. And that it's okay to think about these type of projects in a phased approach. And we talked about this earlier, that it's okay to start with baby steps. Everyone in kind of software implementations or life, really, and I know we're going to talk about that later, is that they always want to get to step 9, 10, or 15, but you have to start at step 2 or 3 in order to get there. And you see this in people in projects, you see this in people in their careers.
Totally.
It's the foundation of growing of things to eventually get to that, kind of more complicated or like end result. And, once you do the little things well, you will do the good things well, but it takes kind of that process and that grind, and even just restarting, like, hey, we're just going to focus on opens and clicks and just kind of figure out, like, between sales and marketing, like, let's just agree on what's working and what's not working, right, and come up with a common theme. And it doesn't have to be, like, we're not going to seriously define MQLs and SQLs, and we don't have to have the lead score in a day, but, just get on the same page, first of all, set some basic goals, work on those goals for 3 months, stop, figure out what you've done, what's working, what not, and then go from there. I see a lot of the time people coming in with and if you have ambitious goals, that's great. Trust me, there's no one that wants you to have more ambitious goals than me.
Totally.
But remember, you got to do the little things to get to the bigger things. And that's in software, and that's in life. You always have to have kind of the foundation in order to get to the next thing.
That makes a lot of sense. I love that phrase too, the crawl, walk, run. It should be like a t-shirt, and,
I mean, really should.
and it reminds me, I don't know if there was that book, who is that? Jim Collins, Great by Choice. That's
yes. Yeah.
And he talked about this thing, the 20-mile march, and the guys were racing. Looks like Falcon Scott and Munson were racing to Antarctica, and one guy was like, "I'm gonna do snowmobiles. I've never tested before." And the other guy's like, "I'm gonna use dog sleds, and I'm only gonna go 20 miles every day, and I won't go more, I won't go less. 20 miles every day, rain or shine, just that." And he was the one that made it, and he beat the other guy by like months, just because he's being consistent like that. It makes sense. And it sounds like this applies beautifully to the idea of, you're crawling, you're walking, you're running, and start with some simple goals. I also liked you brought up the quarterly tempo. That makes a lot of sense. Set some goals, but then check back in with each other.
Yeah. I mean, things aren't going to change in a day. Great if they do, but they're probably not.
Right.
Like, if you agree on a lead scoring strategy, or, what we determine as like an opportunity to our handoff, let's give it a little time, 2 weeks, maybe a month, go back to it. Okay. What's working? What's not working? Let's change it. And, I know something that we've talked about, like, it's okay to admit, like, if your strategy today is wrong, or you know what it is.
Yeah.
Like, it's okay to understand, say, like, we have a hypothesis and we think we know what we're doing, and this is some of the data behind it. And some of that's because you don't have the tools, or the business is new, or you've branched off and wanted to do different things, or graduated to do different things. It's okay to admit that and start from the beginning, and kind of get those metrics. And sometimes I compare it to, it's kind of like a lame analogy, but it's true, like a fourth grade science fair project. Like, this is my hypothesis. This is what I think is going to be my end result. Right. And then, showing your work along that, and like how you get, it's like something like, my parents taught me that I'm now realizing now, like in my 30s or late, my 40s, like, it's not having the answer. It's not knowing X. It's like, how did you get there?
Oh, interesting.
That's one of the more important things. Like, the answer really isn't the end game. It's like the work that got you there.
Right. Because in most cases, you don't know what the answer is yet.
No. And I mean, I think a lot of B2B companies, like, kind of taking it back to that, they're just, although there are tons of advanced companies and users, there are companies that are just making that jump, or new companies from just, basic email to wanting to get, more complicated in marketing automation, and, basing their business on metrics of, how they're working with their sales team. And if you were working poorly in the past, again, that's okay. It's not like a very uncommon thing. Like, we see more and more sales and marketing teams working together, which is great, but like, let's admit that we have to learn to work together first.
I wonder, as you said that, because I almost wonder, like, easier said than done. It's almost like you got to have like a political environment, or maybe non-political. You have to have an environment where you can be okay to just call a spade,
You do. It's spot on. I heard Shane Trigg, he's an EVP in Salesforce, the other day. He said, as long as you speak with intent, it's okay, and explain this is why you're doing this. And I get it. Like, I have a startup background. I've been there. Sometimes marketing and sales aren't in the same page, and they have different metrics, and different bosses and different executives have a different idea of what's going on, and you get pulled in two different ways. You see that in the smallest businesses in the world, all the way up to the largest enterprises. Totally get it. But just having an open conversation of an intent, this is like why we're doing this, and why this is where we're going to focus on this. And again, you can just start small. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to change entirely what sales and marketing are doing today, but let's just set 1 or 2 goals and try to get there. Or even if we get there and we fail, let's just realize like why we failed. And that's what's so important in today in marketing automation, and having those metrics and a system that you can go back to, and, rewriting back to a database of record. If it's Salesforce, that's great. It's great for us. but just like, what are our customers doing? What are they looking at? Why are they doing this? Like,
Right.
basic understanding of that from a sales and marketing perspective will be such a step forward, rather than you go do what you do, you go do what we do, and like maybe we'll figure it out. The
Right.
definition of insanity is just doing the same thing over and over again and thinking there's going to be different results, because
Right.
it's just
Right.
not, it's not going to happen. Like, we've always done this traditionally, so we're going to keep doing it. If you're doing it and it works, that's great. Like, I understand that, but if it's not working, like, it's time to take a step back.
That's a good point. Like, you keep doing it, but you want to grow. So
Yeah.
those are at odds with each other. It's like, well, we do this and we get like half a point growth. It's not really working. But we're gonna keep doing it. We're gonna do more of it because hopefully that'll. It reminded me, there was a company many moons ago, probably back when it was like the old Atlanta days.
Yeah.
There was a company, East Coast, beautiful weather, and I went in and they had this whole floor filled with college grads who were like dialing for dollars, and they were hitting up, I think it was like education. They were just, known universe, probably an abusive ABM, if you'd call it that. They were just blasting professors on these phones, and to the earlier thing, it was kind of, I mean, if you could call a 0.5% or 1% growth year over year working, it was working. And they were actually building a second building, of like 3-story building right next door. When I pulled in, they were building a whole new one just to fill, you already know, just to fill it with more of those college grads. Cause they're like, we'll just do more of this, because I'm sure those professors just need like 3x more phone calls to make a difference. And you know what? We brought Pardot in there and it was crazy, but they were able to get more done with half the people on that first floor. And the real challenge it created for them was, what do we do with the second building? We're already building it.
It's kind of like that old boiler room is a big favorite of mine. Like, sitting in a classic sales
Yeah.
movie, just that same, okay, we're just going to keep adding more people and keep adding more people and more hype and more hype. And, just necessarily because you're calling or emailing the phone book, like it's not going to work. But you said like something like I totally agree with as well. And we've talked about this in the past and we'll talk about this a little bit later, is like just understanding like realistic metrics as well. Like,
Oh yeah.
sometimes you speak to a lot of people on the phone and they have these goals, and we're going to grow the business 30 or 40%, and that's great. Like, to have those goals is awesome, especially like in the startups, the valley where I
Sure.
live from. Like, a lot of these startups companies, they have those, or a lot of them it's 100% year over year, which is great. But let's just like be realistic in like what we can provide from like a sales perspective is someone that's being honest and transparent. But like, what does it mean to your business if we change it by 10% or 12% or 4, like something
Right.
very more realistic. And that's like when you really start to get like buy-in from people. Like, you don't have someone touting these crazy metrics like, oh, we saw a 300% return, and great if you do, more power to you.
Right.
But even just like, what does a 10% difference look like to your business, or a 15%, like to your business in ROI? And ROI isn't like, it's not always about, in this kind of crazy marketing automation world that we live in, it's not always about dollars. Like, if you're building out lists and adding value and growing your database, like there is an investment to be had there.
Yeah.
It doesn't always have to be dollars. Like, if you're growing your database, and especially in these longer sales cycles of companies that are
Yeah.
years, 4 years, like, that's going to be revenue down the line. And let's not, just because we're spending some money, it's not necessarily a bad thing.
It's funny because the barn door kind of swung the other way, where we're talking all about revenue, but we forget, if you got like a 9-month sales cycle and you do something magical today, like you did the best thing, you had unicorns cold calling for you, whatever it was, it doesn't even matter. You're not going to know this for an average of 9 months from now. So you got to be able to measure something else. And to your point, increasing that list size, or the amount of engagement, or, bumping people's scores up, or, getting a lot of, there's a whole bunch of other things you need to be looking at, especially when you're in that B2B side. That's a good point.
Yeah, and it's to use, I'm not a Sixers fan by any means, or Philly fan, but extension of like just trusting the process, that, that investment you make now from 6 to 9 months to a year and a half, that, that person's going to remember you from an email or a phone call. It's true. Like, it does, it very much, like our whole business is based on that. and it's going to eventually turn into an opportunity. And not, let's be honest, not all of those opportunities are going to turn into to close one revenue. But even if you have four and you turn one and that's 100,000, I mean, that's, especially in these bigger deals, like
Yeah.
that moves the needle. So you got to make that investment.
Yeah. Trust the process. And I think the process is so key, right? And as long as you have a process, if you don't have one, then what are you trusting, right? Now, you might as well be in high school ball at that point. But
And it's okay. And it's okay not to have a process as well. Like
okay,
that and be transparent. Be like, we want to start this process. That is the right step in the right direction.
Cool.
That is
That
like,
makes sense.
yeah, that is and it's okay. Like I remember when I was an individual contributor, like a lot of the times you'd work with more enterprise or bigger companies and you'd think they would have a more complex process when it's really almost the opposite. It's like, hey, we're our own business division now, or we're our own unit.
Yeah.
We just need to get some basic metrics for what we do or a specific product. Like it's okay to admit that it's not like a bad thing. Like you don't have to be at step 9 and 10. Like let's just start at step 1 again, and that's okay.
It blows my mind that you're so open and transparent about these sort of stats, because a lot of us came from other companies where sales is like blown up marketing. The marketing's just putting the blame back on sales.
Yeah.
Oh, shit leads. Okay, well, sales never calls them. That cycle. But it's like you're transparent. It's almost like you're not pointing a finger. You're like, let's just test this stuff. Like let's just find out.
And I've been there because I just look from my own experience. Like I remember, when I was a rep and working at enterprise companies or startups, and that, marketing comes, oh, we came back from the trade show. Here's 100 leads, go call. Like those persons were just trying to win an iPad, tchotchke, whatever. Like I remember those days because I was the person on the phone, like just like, why am I calling these 99 people? This is such a waste of time. Like I have been there and done that and lived that life before marketing automation and lead scoring and grading. And there's a million tools out there. Like the tool I represent, Pardot's great as well. There's a million tools, but those tools didn't exist, and like what that life used to be like, and why it matters now to make educated phone calls. And this is why I'm calling, and calling with a purpose or intent. Like that is so much important, because especially like in software sales, like we're not, like, let's be honest and transparent. We're not mortgage brokers. We're not in finance. I'm not going to make, when I was a rep, my reps, they don't make 500 calls a day. Like, good rep, 30, 50, they kind of there, but they're educated phone calls. Like I always talk to younger and newer reps, like take that extra 30 seconds to understand like why you're calling someone. Like maybe have a story. Like we at Salesforce are very localized. Like, I work with these companies in your area that are not just some national brands that we will all recognize, but a local business in your area. And it may not be the coolest business in the world, but it's a business that someone recognized. Like I drive by that on the way to work, and I've worked with these X amount of people that through LinkedIn. Like all the tools are there, just piecing them together, having a story. It doesn't have to take you 10 minutes to put it together. Just have, a 30-second story of like, this is why I'm doing this. This is why I'm making this call. It's such a value add. People will take those calls rather than it's like just the next person.
Yeah, you like robo dialing. Like, you're a human. Don't come across like you're a robot. And that extra intent. And what's interesting? Marketing, we talk about localization all the time. It's cool to hear that work obviously is great on the sales side too. And you're encouraging. Tell me more about that. Like, break that down. How do you approach localization? Do you bring up certain events, or what do you do?
Yeah, I mean, we here at Salesforce, and things I've done in the past, is you always want to know your buyer, and buyers are going to be different. Like I'm here in the Valley, but there's a different kind of buying style, maybe in Texas versus New York, or Boston versus the South. And like you always want to know your area and things people can relate to. You could always spew like, we work with the Facebooks and the Googles, and that's all great. Like, do people really care about that? No. But if like the local company and you can connect, I know this person, and like tools like LinkedIn, it's just such a better story, and it's going to resonate with that person. Like this person took 30 seconds, a minute to understand who I am, but also understands like the world I live in and where I'm at. And it's just so much more of like a personal thing rather and I'm in some crazy office out in some state, and
Yeah.
calling the next person that got $30 million in funding, with every other sales rep in the world that's making that same phone call that morning.
Right.
Like it's like you're never going to get through with that same bland message.
Yeah. Bland is, I mean, we don't eat bland. We don't date bland, we don't marry, all these things, right? Bland is not what you want to be. Um, uh, Not too much pepper, but like throw some garlic in that thing. Yeah, I just think about even a better conversation. Like you want that authentic dialogue. And I just think back, and sometimes I do things on accident. And I love chatting with you and conversations like this because I can learn what the strategy was that maybe I just was emulating from some of the calls I've heard from you or your team. And I'll talk about if I've been somewhere, like I recently was in Omaha. I love Omaha. I've only been there once now, but I'm like, I would go back. And there's like 9 things I can talk about that state. And maybe that's, just part of the localization, but I don't know, it just makes for a better dialogue with someone.
It
Um,
does, like, just understand who you're talking to, understand their background or where they're coming from, and
yeah.
maybe a little. I talk a little about, like, especially when I do my one-on-ones with reps, like, how does this company make money? Like, a question that is so basic and so easy, but yet you'd be surprised like how many people don't really understand. And then so like I can tailor that to my conversation.
Right.
Like I'm very much like, even in kind of like my management career now, and I'm like always trying to be on the phone, trying to stay sharp. Like, if even if you get off the phone for 2 weeks or a month, and it's this business, especially in kind of the SaaS business, which I'm assuming most people that kind of listen to this are, like, it is such a month and month over and over business.
Totally.
If you take a break for 2 weeks, it's like, I'm not going to forget how to ride the bike by any means, but it's like, I haven't done this in a couple of weeks. Like,
Yeah.
you always gotta be on your game, and it's tough
Totally.
because it's the grind, but it's the difference between good and great.
For sure. And it's something you got to keep your weapon sharp, you got to sharpen that axe. Can't leave it out in the rain.
Yeah,
you know?
I mean, you always just gotta be. I know it sounds so lame, like a salesperson, like, out there grinding, like, I know, I get it, but it is true. Like, if you're it's like people that are like athletes, like people that spend their time on the gym or in the field, or that person's a gym rat. Like, there's a reason they've built the skills they have today, and not everyone's naturally gifted, and not everyone's like social, and not everyone like sometimes has those skills. But it's like, again, like back to the sports analogy of like trusting the process and putting the work. Like, that's what gets you to, it's that one better month, or over
Yeah.
accelerating, or making them some additional money, or President's Club. All that stuff is the time you put in before. It's never just like one deal, or it's the
Right.
body work.
Right. Like, hey, overnight success.
Yeah.
That's not the case with athletics. It's not the case with endurance stuff, which we'll talk about. It's not the case with sales either, right?
That's like, I mean, get back
Yeah.
onto it. It's not the case of sales and marketing. Like, it's not an overnight success. It's
Yeah.
time. It's the time you put in working together and working on your own stuff, and it's a body of work. It's not an overnight email. I mean, there's definitely emails that are going to perform better than others, and it's like, wow, that's killing it for us. But you didn't just get there in one day.
Right. Right. But it's also a good reminder to people, like, it's not that magic template.
No, it's not.
Hey,
It's not.
start with it, but it's that context, it's that intent that you're talking about. That you gotta know something about them. And I love to hear some of these questions, because the idea of, how does this company make money? It's surprising. I didn't realize this. So I started chatting with some people. Not even they'll try to sell someone and not know anything about their business. Yeah, I'm selling XYZ company and buy my stuff, and you have no idea who they are. It's like,
Yeah.
how can you? Well, you can try to sell them, but if you're surprised about bad results, it's because they know you have no idea about who they are, and you're not providing in that intent, that context, that conversation.
You're spot on. And it doesn't have to be like, you don't have to spend hours,
Yeah, right.
like someone's, financials, or if they're publicly whatever.
Yeah,
Just, okay, this is what this company does. And as you build up in your career, you'll get better and better. And everyone knows this, that,
yeah,
okay, this type of business works like this, and I can assume things about a business. And sometimes I tell, especially when I'm talking to executives, directors, like, I will assume this about your business. Correct me if I'm wrong. Usually
I like that. Yeah,
not sound arrogant or cocky, but like, usually I'm right. because I've done it before, but you can make those assumptions, and especially about their sales cycle and how their sales teams work, and if they have BDRs or SDRs in that process. And you and I know this, and a lot of people, like when they're changing or migrating platforms or taking the next level up, here are the problems you're going to face. And it
Yeah.
also sells like confidence in the buyer, like, okay, this person understands not only my world, but the pain and trouble that I am going to go through. But you have to have that stuff dialed, or you're going to lose them. Or like,
Right.
or that person is, I don't know about that. Like, and as soon as you get to that point, it's pretty much over. And a lot of that has to do with transparency and being honest, and talking kind of, again, like with intent. But if you have that story in maybe it's just the same 10 stories that kind of over and over, that's okay.
Sure. Yeah.
And you can do a little more research. It's not, you don't have to know every business and every model and every return method. You don't.
Huh. I like the assumption, right? Throwing out a couple assumptions. Correct me if I'm wrong. We don't, but and it kind of reminds me a little bit like almost like a challenger sale or something, where sometimes we can do too much discovery, right? Ask too many questions, and they're like, dude, I just told you a bunch of stuff, not to tell someone else a bunch of stuff. Like, is this your first time doing this? But coming at them with, I want to learn a little bit more about you, but people in your, either industry or size and shape and feel, and, they're usually having problems with this, they're having problems with this, and, or you're probably concerned if you're moving over, probably concerned about downtime, you're concerned about this other thing. And they're like, yeah, well, you know me, you're like, yeah, I know, we work with 100, we help a lot of people out like this. So it kind of brings a little more to the conversation than just asking all the time,
Yeah, mitigating risk, understanding the buyer.
Yeah.
And even if you get 2 out of 3 things, it's like okay to get something wrong, because that usually generally opens up like more conversation. Like, hey, we don't do this, but this, and it's like, hey, let them talk. Like, stop.
Right.
Like, hit mute on the phone and let them talk for 15 minutes, because you're going to get everything that you want. And it's like, we don't do this, but we do this, and like, I remember like young reps like, oh, mute, just let them talk, like let them go, because that's kind of the got them, reel them in, got them, open up.
They're engaged,
Yeah, we're good here.
It's like they're lit up like a Christmas tree or something, where they're like, oh, this person gets me. We're seeing each other, and now I can share this finally with someone who understands the situation I'm in, and they could probably give me some info off of the details I'm going to give them. That's really cool to see that happen.
Yeah, it's kind of like the old NBA jams. He's on fire. Just let him go. He's on fire.
Dude, remember that video game?
Well, today is also we do have to give a big shout out to my Warriors. Today is our championship parade. I'm a big Warriors fan, so
awesome, man.
Stephen Clay are going to be out there with the probably on fire.
It's funny. I don't follow basketball, but I suppose if I was in that area, I would, because I'd have every reason to. Like, dang, you guys win all the time.
I do gotta admit, I am a historical or longtime Warriors fan. We do have a bunch of people that jumped on the bandwagon, and that's totally okay. But I was there during the coaches getting choked out,
right?
Win. I grew up on the run team, Chris Mullen, and run team Mitch Richmond and Tim Hardaway. That was back in the late '80s, early '90s.
You go back.
That was my up on the wall.
See, for me, it was the Patriots. I was there when they lost every game, so I feel great.
I forgot you. Edelman and Brady grew up in my neighborhood that I live in now, so they're quite the heroes in my neighborhood.
Yeah, California, right? Is where they're from.
Yeah, just in the peninsula. Edelman lives. Brady went to Sarah, which is like probably 10 minutes north of where I live, and then Edelman, 15 minutes south. Literally the same neighborhood that I live in now with my wife.
You guys didn't hang out and get noodles?
No, I didn't. Well, I grew up a little. I didn't grow up there now.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Jules is, I think they call him.
Yeah.
He's. I heard he's good people.
Yeah, I imagine so. They keep winning most of the time, except for this recent Super Bowl. But I'm still in recovery for that one.
Oh, we got Garoppolo now, so we will. We'll see what happens this year.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what happens with that. So, hey, you had a thing. We were chatting earlier. We were talking a little bit about the Jets. Oh, no, Yankees, I think it was.
Yankees, Mets.
Yeah, tell me about that, because it was a really cool metaphor.
Yeah, so it's a big thing on my team. I've heard it from a lot of people in kind of spec ops or like military background. I was involved with a bunch of events called Go Ruck. We'll talk about this later, like endurance events, where there's kind of like a famous speech, and I use it a lot on my sales teams, and other people at Salesforce use it, where working in software sales or Salesforce or kind of the company you're at, it's almost like being a professional baseball player, and probably a professional baseball player in New York. And I am not a fan of any New York sports. I love the
Yeah, me
town.
neither.
Not me either.
What up,
But
New York?
what happens a lot of the time in sales specifically is that what it really is like being, say you're a professional baseball player. It's really like playing for the Mets in New York. It's not playing for the Yankees.
Mm,
And most of the days, or 9 out of 10 of the days in sales, are Mets days. And
interesting.
it's putting in the work and you're getting kicked in the teeth. And it's like you play professional baseball, but you're not the pinstripes. You're not like the it team of the town. And every now and then, especially as you go up more and more in your career, is a Yankees day. And those are the days. Like that is like when the month comes together, or a big deal, or you get a promotion, or something happens. And it happens less frequently the more and more you go up. Sometimes for me in my career towards the end, before I got into management, it would happen maybe once a year or once every 2 years. But again, like I trust the process, and those are Yankees days. But most of the time, it's mostly Mets baseball, and Mets baseball isn't that good. No offense.
Yeah.
It's putting in the time as a Mets player, and there's all these. I get it. They're like lame analogies, like getting kicked off a horse or this and this. But you see it a lot in people's career as well, as they may be a year or two into sales, and they've had some success. But the first time they get kicked off the horse, or, we talk a lot about peaks and valleys as well, they go into a deep valley that they can't get out of it. And it's part of this process, especially in SaaS, especially in, B2B, month over month, which pretty much every company is now.
Yeah.
I don't know of a company out there or a sales manager out there that I know, or a leader that doesn't look at the business month over month. When they haven't had, or they've always had success and they get in a lump or they can't get out of it, that is a true kind of character building moment. And there are a lot of people that, like, I'm done. I want to go do something else. And that's okay. Sometimes it takes a year or two in sales to understand this isn't the life for me. And that's okay. That's totally fine. But it's really the people that you build a business around that haven't always had success, because they're eventually going to get to a point where things aren't good, or we're down in a valley now, and can I get out of that, or can I kind of dig deep and know that it's going to get brighter, and it's not going to get brighter tomorrow, but it's going to get brighter down the line. A lot of the times, like when people, like their first role, like I've only been in management now for like 2 years, but when you get promoted or you go to take over a team, it's like that team, the reason you're probably getting that team is that team may or may not have been performing.
Right.
This is going to be the first time in your life where you're not on the best team, or you're not owning that. And again, I'm kind of going on here. It's, it's hard. It's those are moments where you got to dig.
It kind of reminds me of like the Mighty Ducks, right?
Yeah.
Hey, superstar hockey coach, we're not going to put you on the team that's doing really well. Like, what's the sense in that? Well, maybe we could, but yeah, put you on the Mighty Ducks or put you on the Mets or something. And and I was at a baseball game this weekend with my kids and my brother and his kids, and you're right, they're minor league, and we're just thinking, hey, like some guy hit a home run, other people, they're working really hard, and that's what you got to do. I mean, you got to put in the time, put in the effort. But it's funny, cliches are usually true, and it took me a couple of years.
There's a reason it's a cliche. Yeah.
Right. There's like a reason, there's some sort of story or cultural thing that's like, maybe it's like how like hunter-gatherers told things in the past, was like, hey, pyramids create great shadows, oh yeah, totally, oh, it's so cliche, but they sort of indicate something. And you brought up courage, especially when the month is low, or everything was golden, and then you're like, you got a new territory or something happened. And I looked up, there was this quote, John Wayne, right? Courage is being scared to death and saddling up anyways, or doing it anyways. Courage isn't fun. you know, like people are like, oh, courageous, but like courageous means like, man, I don't know if this is gonna work, but I'm gonna give it my all anyways.
Yeah. I mean,
Interesting.
it's okay. And it's okay to be scared or nervous. Like
Yeah.
to every person that tries to act like they're the toughest leader, like I try to be honest and transparent, where I've been the opposite. Like where I've been, like I remember working in sales during the recession because I've been in it for so long, or like
Right.
startup that's not doing well. And you have kind of those moments, especially when you're by yourself or in the car or like going for a long run, where it's like that is like very mentally tough. Like, is this the life for me? Do I want to do something else? Can I get through this? Like, I have been in those down moments before, and you have to trust the process, but also like, can I work to get through it and work with my own self to get through and change what I need to? Because it's not always going to be, a lot of times when people are newer or younger in sales, they've only seen a good economy, or they've worked for a company
Oh,
that's done
sure.
well. Like, wait till you work for the vendor that's the number 3 vendor, or the
Yeah.
different kind of markets. Like, you have to have those moments, and I've been there, and I know what that's like, and it's hard, but it's like remembering those moments too, and those Mets moments, to be able to have the kind of these Yankees days.
Right. Right. Put in the time as a Met so you can really shine when you're a Yankee. That's cool. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna take you back. Actually, one of the things you were asking someone, on the team or whatnot, how does this company make money? What other kind of things do you ask? Because this feels like you're getting at, you're kind of like gently prodding people by asking them questions to get more relevant or to see if they understand the context of what's going on. What kind of questions do you ask, or what kind of things you sort of like encouraging your team to like look into when they're in the sales process?
Yeah. So I mean, when I talk to prospects, especially, I still, I may be a manager, but I always think of myself still as like an individual contributor, because I still
Sure.
have a number at the end of their day, and that's my
Yeah.
number and I own it.
Yep.
It's not gonna change. And like when I talk to people, especially like the first time I'm jumping on the phone, or if it's conversation and it's more like a business development conversation, not trying to get a deal done conversation, is just like, tell me how you're doing things today. Like,
Yeah.
what's working, what's not working. And I think something we talked about earlier is like, where would you like to be in 6 months? And
Right.
it doesn't have to be like a desired state, because the desired state may be 2 or 3 years down the line. Just like, what are some quick wins and goals that we can help you with? Because a lot of the times in sales, I think, again, going back to this like kind of month over month and owning a month over month number, when you get into people pitching like the bigger ideas and the bigger deals, and I've worked in the enterprise for years, I get it. But there's also a point where it's like, hey, I need to take, as a sales rep, I need to take something, as well as the customer, like I need to take something off the table, or we need to do like step one. So I'm always thinking about like, hey, desired state is cool. That's great. That may be 3 years down the line. And hey, Salesforce, if any company, is the company to work for that. But
Right.
what is a quicker win, or what is kind of like a phase one look like? And then mapping a solution around that. Like, let's first get in the 30K or 40K or 60K, like whatever it is, whatever you're kind of, and then phase two, we can go chase that. Once we get them comfortable and excited,
Yeah.
let's go chase that $500,000 deal. Let's go chase that 7-figure deal. Like, I've worked on that
Right.
in part of those as well. But there's something to be said for quick wins and getting business in the door. Especially if you can work on those, like as a rep. Like, I was always thinking, what can I work on? So I have so many things going that, like, I know I'm going to hit my number, and I know this is easier said than done, but like, no matter what, like, even if I close like 4 deals out of the 8 I'm working, like, I'm going to be good.
Right.
Yeah. I'm good for that month anyway.
And that kind of reminds me too that sales doesn't have to be that like used cars, just pushy push thing. Because when
Doesn't.
you talk about planning, a lot of people, I'll even say most people aren't planning as much as they should. And this, and if you're helping shepherd them, because I heard you like, what would you like? Okay, long term, great. Now, what would you like short term? What would be some awesome wins? And people, I'd be curious, how many times you ask people that question, they're like, it's a great question. You're kind of like giving them permission to dream about what could be happening, a quarter from now. And I mean, that's super helpful.
Yeah, the short-term wins, in my opinion, are always better than, not always better, but it just a better win than kind of that long-term, and then you may never get, that you may
Right.
never at as a salesperson, but it's also setting appropriate expectations with, the person you're selling to. Like we talked about this yesterday,
Yeah.
like all the time salespeople and newer, younger people, like, they think like the deal ends when like someone signs like a PO, or I got the DocuSign, cool, I
Yeah.
don't have to work with them again. No, like that's
Peace.
just the start. That is just the start of the
Yeah.
relationship. And there is probably, once you learn and gain their trust of selling them product or service A, B, and C, like D, E, and F is going to be such a quicker cycle and probably a bigger deal for you. But
Right.
you got to earn that. You got to earn that trust first, and kind of go get that bigger deal.
And that kind of ties into a little bit of what we were chatting about, the idea that, I mean, you made this statement the other day to me that it really wasn't about the GPA. It wasn't about, um, a lot of these more, earthly tangibles, that it'd been how you treat people. I wonder if you could like break that down, because you mentioned not just dropping people at the end of a deal. That seems kind of standard. People would just, hey, thanks for signing, peace. I'll
Yeah.
never talk to you again. But
Yeah.
there's
Here's
a
my
lot of
customer
these things.
success later. Like,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of it, and I think a lot in my life has never come from, and not that I think like I'm successful, because there's still a lot to go, but it's a lot of what I've ever accomplished in my life is because of like relationships I've had with people,
Yeah.
or like or when I've helped promote people or seen people get promoted or been kind of like a part of that. It's never about like one deal. Like
Right.
the deal may be the icing on the cake, which is great. And you see this especially like in SaaS and in software sales at the end of the year. Excuse me, at the end of the year, like they just blow out their Q4 number, and it's that person's ready to get promoted or take the next step or whatever the next thing is.
Sure.
But it's not like because they close deal X, Y, and Z, that's the next thing. It's always like a body of work, and
Right.
it's always like and I didn't learn this till I was much older. How you are perceived, and is that person looked at as trustworthy, or someone that I would like to represent or I can trust. And a lot of that, the body of work takes a lot of time. It's never going to be just like, oh, because they closed this one huge deal, like they're ready for the next thing. No, it's never about that. Like I've been in
Interesting.
conversations with management and promoting people, and it's like we're not talking about like a deal. We're always talking about their body of work and like who
Yeah.
they are. And sometimes it's like the littlest things. It's like respect, or looking people in the eye, or shaking their hands. Like a
Right.
lot, a lot of that stuff goes like a really, really long way.
And and it's a small world, right? So your body of work, it builds up, and you get a reputation, whether East Coast, West Coast, wherever you're at. That universe is small. We were just chatting earlier about different people in sales that we know, we've worked with, and it's like, yeah, and this is what happens. And especially if you're at a big company with great salespeople, they
Yeah.
end up going to different places, and your body of work speaks for you more than that deal, because
Yeah, it's
yeah,
it's like people say it about the Valley here or the Bay Area, but I mean now that I'm getting kind of a little older and maybe a little higher in my career, like it's really like at a national level, and
yeah,
like software is such a big thing, or sales is such a big thing. It is very small, and all kind of these people know these people, or
right,
especially with things like LinkedIn, these kind of like second degree of connections, and it's
yeah,
very easy to find out things. Not like that's, I don't mean this like in a bad way, but like find out things about people or
yeah.
people. It's very easy to do, and it gets it is a very, very small universe at the end of the day. Like software is such a big thing, and these companies are so big now, but it's a lot of people, everyone kind of knows everyone at the end of the day.
Right, right. Just further emphasize, and I heard you talking about relationships, and it's that unselfish relationship. You were promoting people. You were looking to have your customers actually succeed. Imagine that. And you were looking to have your teammates succeed, and now people on your team succeed. I mean,
Yeah.
that's
I'm a
speaks for
Yeah.
itself.
Yeah, I'm very much like a team player. There's a leader in our business, and Keith Block, he talks about, like, we don't have to go into it, but talks about like shipmate self. This is like a big thing. I was never in the military, but they talk about a lot of people in the Navy, of like putting your team before you. And
Mm,
I think as you go up in your career, especially when you really get into like enterprise sales and working as a team, we talk about this a lot at Salesforce. You will never be successful as like a lone wolf, or trying to do things by yourself.
right.
especially in this enterprise world. And you may be able to do it a year or a year and a half, like
Right.
one big deal, or you focus on this one thing. But like if you don't learn to work with people and work as a team, and it just makes for so much like of a better environment as well. Like
Right.
love to see like people. I'm big on like GChat and like Chatter we use at Salesforce. Like people, "Okay, this is the best practice. I have this cool." Like it just makes so much for like a better working environment and people like working together rather than a bunch of individual contributors and people that aren't team players. It's just a life skill you need to learn as well. But I'm big, and I believe that in all things,
Yeah.
like fitness. Like I very much believe like in group fitness or keeping people accountable, or like even it's just like a text chain with my friends, like, yo, I got 4 miles today, or I did this, or I did that. Like you're trying to do things by yourself is very, very hard. And it's, there are special people that can do it, but it's not, you're going to be more successful as a team player, in my opinion, always.
Yeah, that's so true, man. And you mentioned the ship examples. So I was Marine Corps, and some of the people that were in charge or whatnot were always like, who are those guys? But what you really did was you did stuff for the person on your left and the person on your right, and you really looked after them. And the cool thing was, if you were looking after them, you had two people looking after you. It just works that way. And you're right that the selfish ones, the ones that's just out for them, you would perceive that as like that was a weakness in the chain, a
Yeah.
weak link really, because they're something fishy. They're looking all just out for themselves. So yeah, it's so true how that just, whether it's military or just work and whatnot.
And it's hard too. Like, I mean, I get it. Like I'm a competitive person in sales. Like
Yeah.
it's I get it. It's not, work at the end of the day is great. I really appreciate everything like any business has ever done for me. But, I'm sometimes, and it's selfish, but I'm thinking about my W-2 or I'm thinking about myself. But if you put in kind of that helping hand, and I know this sounds so cheesy, like I know it, but it will pay dividends later down the line. Like anything that I've ever done in my career, and we've talked about this, like has always just come from like other things that I've done from other people, not
Right.
like because I closed some deal or something.
Right. Who are you, man? How did you acquire these things? Like obviously you've had you've experienced crazy companies, you've experienced great ones. You're obviously one now where you can be free to be open and transparent, and that's really badass. So, I mean, take me back. How, are you just an overnight salesperson, or how did
I
this
was
all
kind
work?
of I was kind of different. I went to Chico State Wildcats. It's actually a school that Salesforce heavily invests in.
Oh, cool.
None of this was there when I was there. There was like a
Right.
sales major, and it wasn't at the time. It was like more of kind of like the party school mantra that has since changed. But very much what that school and kind of that university taught me was to be social, how to look people in the eye, how to shake. I mean, my parents also taught me this, but like how to look people in the eye and have a conversation, and be kind of a bigger person than myself. I
Sure.
actually didn't start in software. I worked in the construction industry for a little while, selling toilets in copper. So if you ever
Yeah.
knew anything about buying like, thousands of toilets for,
Are there that many varieties, or is it just kind of like there are?
yes, and copper, I can tell you how to buy copper in bulk. And
Nice.
long story short, I randomly ran into a friend of mine in the city at kind of like a festival weekend. He just like looked like very successful. I remember he was like buying drinks for people at the bar, and I was like, like, what do you do, man? Like,
Right.
we were young kids at the time. I think I was like 23, 24. He was like, I'm in software sales. I was like, there's money in that. And this is kind of the start of like, there'd been like the dot-com boost,
Right. Right.
or not boost, but kind of debacle. This was 2004, 2005. There were like open office spaces everywhere in the valley.
Yeah.
He's like, you want a job? I'll set you up. Like, quit my job that Monday, moved back to the Bay Area where I'm from, and got into kind of software sales. I worked very differently. Like I started at a big enterprise company. I worked at
Okay.
Google for 5 years. Started as like what someone would typically call like a BDR, SDR. Eventually got into like database or very like tech specific sales, which is
Got it.
very opposite of what I do now. Like database and Infusion middleware. Worked there for 5 years. Everyone was kind of doing the startup thing, did that. And that was very tough for me. I try to be as honest and transparent as like the startups that I work at. everyone has these grand ideas of startups and what they are. And that did not go well for me.
What
And
was it really like?
yeah, I
Everyone
mean,
thinks it's like the movies or TV.
yeah, everyone sees these shows and these
Yeah.
Get Rich Quick and these Facebooks and like the Silicon Valley shows and all that stuff is great. But remember, it's like all TV, and it's 1% of the companies that like IPO or have like a big multiplier. It's actually make it. Like that's like people don't take into account for the 99% of companies that don't make it. There's some really interesting articles like just like about unicorns, and for a lot of people that's like very hard, and that trying to sell something that's never been sold or sell SaaS or it's
Right.
like that where you don't have a lot of help. And it took me being much older now in my career to understand really kind of what I was doing back then, and like they weren't really set up for success. And some of those companies, it was at the infancy, whatever, but it was
Sure.
tough. And then I kind of got a chance meeting to work at Marketo. That I was, I think, exactly like employee 200 there. So they were starting to kind of take off.
Yeah.
I was at that
Different
business.
than the startup, right?
Yeah, yeah. It
The
was.
startup would have like 3 episodes in the season, and then all of a sudden you come in, it's like you don't have you spent 18-hour days for the last 4 months, and everything's gone. So see you later.
Yeah, it was a crazy ride. It was through like just a chance meeting with someone that knew me through like a personal connection, and that was a rocket ship. And I was there
Yeah.
for almost 4 years. Went through the IPO. I saw that business really grow from like 200 to when I left, probably like 600-700 employees. Went to come to Salesforce where I'm at now. Through a chance meeting, and a bunch of people know we can talk about them through like Blitzer and Derek Grant.
Yeah.
Mike Costow, a lot of that was just kind of like a chance meeting. Took a little bit of a risk. It was kind of like a competitor situation. I won't get into it, but ended up working out for me. But it's really the kind of those relationships, and I know Adam well.
Yeah.
That through kind of just a chance meeting propelled or got me here.
Right.
And now I've been here for almost 4 years. Half that time was as an individual contributor, and really kind of not in management, but help start more of what we call like the general business or enterprise division of Pardot, which
Sure.
obviously on the marketing automation side. Then I've been in management for about 2 years now, both kind of like in our marketing cloud and Pardot side of the business.
How'd you make that change? Because I know a lot of people say, sometimes the best reps, or most of the time, the best reps don't make
Yeah,
the best managers. It's like a different job altogether.
it's hard. That's so true. And I didn't understand that till I was on the other side.
Sure.
And that took me a long time to realize, and in this effort of being transparent and honest, that my day was you're a business owner, you get it. Like
Yeah.
my day was no longer my day.
Sure.
I no longer had to think about just what are my goals, or I had to start thinking as a team again, as a leader. And this from being in the military, there's no bad teams, there's just bad leaders, and it's
Sure.
really well. Kind of getting to that mentality, and that takes like a very long time, and working with different personalities and different people, and that was hard for me. Like
Yeah.
the sales stuff kind of took care of itself. Like I was good at that, but it's all
Right.
the other things. And that's a lot of the time that's management, like being able to, hey, that's great. You can get to your number, but can you grow 10 or 12 other people and, hit all these other metrics that are important to the business?
Yeah.
Well, that is really kind of the learning curve. And once you kind of peel back the onion and kind of first layer level of management and where I'm at now, you start to see so much more that you didn't realize that's part of the business. And it goes into making companies like Salesforce or other companies. And you're like, oh, my life was a little easier when I was
Yeah. Right.
when I just had,
Here's your number. Hit it. You got it.
I just had my own number and had to think about my own responsibilities, and it opens your eyes to stuff that like,
Yeah.
wow, I should have done this as a rep, and a whole bunch of stuff you didn't see before, but that's all part of the experience. But it took me a while. I mean, I think I didn't just like, yeah, this is with anyone that I really know. It didn't just like, again, it just didn't happen overnight.
Sure.
I started having conversations with other leaders, which I suggest to anyone out there doing. Always try to grab 15 minutes or a coffee or whatever, or just a conversation about leadership, or you're kind of wanting to take the next steps and what that looks like. And first, I think the most important thing is getting an understanding of what that life is really like. Is
Yeah.
that I know a lot of people be like, oh, that's what they just say they want to do that. But
Yeah. Yeah.
into it, they're like, oh, this is not, this is not what I was thinking.
Because you don't get the praise as much, right? I mean,
No.
like the rep slaying the woolly mammoth, dragging him back to the cave. It's like kudos, ring the bell. You got this thing. The managers, you got marionettes, and you're sort of like coaching people. It's like you're the director of the play. You get a little applause. You get to be on the script, but like the people taking the bow, you're not the one taking the bow.
And it's not like, let's not boohoo for us by any means, but
True. I mean, true.
yeah, it is. It's definitely like a new world, but it took me a while. Like people started to groom me and started to bring me in on other conversations, and and kind of open my eyes, or this is what the next step looks like, and to start to plan for that. But I mean, my advice to anyone looking to do that or kind of get into management or leadership is kind of open your eyes up to it and first, and talk about it with other people and get other people's support and other business leaders or partner support. It helps tremendously.
Yeah, that makes sense. Sounds like you were really supported too. So just like you were saying, like have the group fitness, have the workout buddies. It sounds like you had different, whether they're senior to you or peers or whatnot. You just be like, hey, what's the deal here? And you got some really good advice along the way.
Yeah, I'm a big believer, and again, it took me till I was older to really understand it. But like, you have some people call it a tribe.
Yeah.
Have that, because it always ends up working out for you. And if it wasn't meant to be, it wasn't meant to be, and there's probably a reason behind it too.
Right. Right. Speaking of tribe, no, there's no segue there, but so let's talk, man, because I know that while you're doing all this, you're hitting the events. It was like the rock event. We got this mutual passion. We almost, for people listening, we almost just said screw the podcast. We're just going to talk about all before the podcast. But tell me, man. So you've been doing some long runs, and I know you like the endurance type stuff, like I do.
Yeah. Endurance is endurance events, or more kind of like individual events, is something I've got into kind of like in my mid to late 30s. I'm 30
Sure.
now. I love team sports. I've always been a team, like, basketball, baseball, that stuff, but I'm getting a little older, like a twisted ankle or knee that, I can't really have that anymore.
Right.
Um, so I've gotten into kind of like individual sports, and there's still like, I'm a big snowboarder, and I grew up on it, or getting in the ocean and surfing or whatever. I still love that stuff, and I'm on my mountain bike, and I love to go fast with my friends, like downhill mountain biking. But
Sure.
individual sports is really something I've gotten into kind of lately over the last couple of years. And whether it's I run like half marathons, I've run marathons. There's like a 70.3 Ironman I'm kind of eyeing.
Yeah.
I was part of an organization called GoRuck for a while, which is kind of like endurance events, which is more like special teams or military focused, that I really, really liked. That's over like, 14 hours or 24 hours. And you start in the middle of the night in the ocean. Anyone that,
Oh,
check
cool.
it out, www.gorock.com. All that stuff I really got into. And what I liked about, or what I learned about myself and a lot of that stuff, like, I'm not like, I don't love running. Like, I've never like
Right.
experience of like, I'm going to go run and get a sweat, and, I'm going to feel like a better person when I get back. But there's never out there, and people that have run long distances before, like 10, 15, 20 miles, like there gets to a point when I'm out there, I'm just like, I am so over this. Like I can't
Yeah.
listen. I don't have a playlist this long, or
Yeah. No.
but it's the mental fort. And again, it sounds cheesy, but it's true. It's like the mental fortitude that teaches you.
Yeah.
You go doing those events, because those events aren't about like it's showing up in that day and like, oh, I'm just going to kill it in a day. It's like you have to put in the time, and you have to do the
Yeah.
training, and having, like, really realizing like what a positive mental attitude is. And I didn't learn about like positive mental attitude. I wish I knew it a much younger thing. Like,
Yeah.
we didn't really talk about that, but I wasted probably so much time as a young rep, and any young reps that are listening, like complaining about things or a territory or worrying about what's happening to someone else or someone else's things. And
Huh.
like that, you got to learn to forget all that because it's all wasted energy. And just
Right.
like positive and that like endurance events and running or biking, whatever. Swim. I'm just kind of getting into swimming now. I'm short, so I'm not like the best swimmer. Like learning to like all the work that goes into it, like that's what makes it
Right.
so cool. And showing up on race day and all the same people that are like-minded people that have put in that same effort and kind of celebrating that, and the
Totally.
handshakes and high fives and hugs. And again, it sounds so cheesy, but it's like if you've ever done anything like that, like a big event like a marathon or other things, like I promise you that stuff is so motivating, and it's like the best thing.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. I just did a try on Sunday, I think. Sunday? I think so. Yeah, this past Sunday. And you the race day thing you're talking about, so true, man. It's like it's a select group of people. No one's like, there's a few superstars in there with
Yeah.
the Wadi tri suits, but
Yeah.
Wadi Inc. But everyone's just cool, whether you're super in shape or that's your first try. Everyone's just kind of got that feel. We're all good. We're setting, get my bike ready and my gear ready at the transition area. People to my left and right. We're just high, hey, is you first? How you doing? It just,
You need to pump
yeah,
up your bike. Like, what do you think in this?
yeah,
And you probably know this better than anyone. Like, I didn't understand until later in life, and it's part of a growing experience of like associating yourself with like-minded people and like losing toxic people in your life. And like, you'll never find those type of people out on a race course or an event.
no,
They just don't exist. And
you
there's,
die.
yeah. And even just like when you're running or you're in the thick of things, just like sometimes, like I remember when I went my first try, I've only actually won, or excuse me, my first full marathon, I've only actually run one full marathon. Even just like the handshakes on the side or little kids or the people like that means so much to so many
Oh,
people when you're on
yeah.
the race. Like, especially when you're in the pain cave, mile 18 or mile 20 or mile 23, when you're starting to break down and you're becoming calorie deficient and those things, like that means so much to you inside. And I know we've talked about this, like the 40% rule, like when your body's really ready to quit. And this comes from David Goggins and some other people like who I know you've read. Like that is just the beginning. Like you're only 40% of the way there, and the body is
Right.
so much more. And I know it sounds cheesy, but it's true in sales. Like the effort you make, that extra effort, it doesn't have to be a 60% effort. It as well as in marketing, that means it's a big thing.
So true, man. You know what? You reminded me. This is cool because you're reminding me stuff that I've experienced that I'm not even calling attention to. When people cheer on these races, and the one I did was like a local Nashville one, so it's big. They got a lot of food vendors.
Yeah.
It's like, but a lot of community too. A lot of people out
Yeah.
there cheering on. It's not one of those like isolated things where no one's really there. And when there's people on the side of the street and they're ringing their bells, they have these like cowbells, or they're just cheering you on, or they see your name on your thing and they're like, "Hey, go KC," or "You got this," water's around the corner, You're right. You're in the thick of it, and that little bit, they're focusing on you instead of them, and that little bit just like gives you that little energy boost,
Yeah, it's like it may be the littlest thing to them, but it's like the biggest thing to you. And it's the same thing.
Right.
Like when you show up and you work as a team and you work with people, and there aren't the people that are negative or complaining or constantly. No one wants to be around that.
Right.
Keep kind of working with the positive people and the people that are always, it sounds so cheesy, and I know it sounds cheesy, but it's true, and it makes such a difference in your attitude and your workload and what you're going to do. And in all those events, it's the same thing. Like, I can get that extra mile, or okay, God, I'm getting ready for the run course. I just spent 2 hours on the bike, like that. It makes a big difference.
You're right. And you were mentioning Goggins earlier, David Goggins, right? Is that
Yes, yes.
it?
Big fan. Big.
Fascinating story, man. I mean, he had a good podcast with Joe Rogan, but for people listening, he does he's a Navy SEAL, crazy things, and he's trained some people, and they've talked about the training he's done with them, where he'll say, "Okay, nice to meet you, day one. Hey, do as many pull-ups as you can. Okay, you did 8 or however many you can because you're a baller. Okay, do them again. You do like a little bit less, and do it again. You do like 2 or 3, and you're basically maxed out. Your arms are tired. And then he basically told the guy, all right, we're not leaving here till you get to 100. It's like, what? I just maxed out. I've only got like maybe add them up 12. How am I going to get to, that extra bit? But to your point, you think you're tired, but you probably have 40% more. And you probably experienced that. I mean, what was that like on the marathon? Where does it get? I've only done a half for that. So where did it get really crazy for you?
I think for me, it's when, especially like if you do a full, when you see people start to finish for the half, and then you really like, wow, like I have a full now. You're probably 2 hours, depending on what your pace.
Yeah.
You're probably 2 hours, hour 45 into it, and wow, I have to run this all 2x over. I'm gonna run this time. And you get excited, you see people, and you start to get excited. And for me, I had never really kind of gone past, and that was on me. I was training for my first one, like 18, 19, because you don't want to overtrain, because when you
Right.
start to put that many miles on the body,
Yeah.
you can't recover. I think I really got to like what people call like kind of the pain cave, was probably like mile like 17, 18-ish. And that mile from like 17 to really, because towards 24, you can start to see the end, or you
Yeah.
usually know where you are. But that was really, probably one of the most mentally tough from like a sports aspect
Sure.
thing I've ever done, of kind of breaking through that barrier. And it's all, at that point, it's all just mental. It's not, the body's starting to give out, but it's, can you overcome these things in your mind to get through like where you need to be? And some of that, like people start to break down, or they start to think less of themselves, or I haven't trained, I haven't put in the time, and the body's going to realize that. But it's a tough thing. It was my first one. Now I think I'd know like that I've experienced it and been better. Like when I remember showing up for it and being like, I am the most unathletic person here, and kind of thinking like I'm maybe somewhat of I don't think I'm an athlete, but a little bit of an athlete. And I remember being like, oh, like I am maybe the worst person here.
Yeah.
But it's like, okay. And now that I know, like having been through that, and it's the same thing with sales and marketing. Like the first time you do something, it's going to be different, but you're gonna figure it out, and you're going to have to go through a little, there's got to be a little mental toughness there.
Yeah. And, that kind of, it's like that courage muscle, going through something that it really pushed you to the limit, but then coming out at the end, man, you're Superman at the end of that.
Yeah, you're going to feel it that night or the next day, but you've definitely been there.
Sore Superman. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a great experience. I certainly encourage anyone. And again, it doesn't have to be some big, just get out and do like a 5K, get out and do a 10K. You learn a lot by yourself. You probably meet some cool people. And even better, like I'm always encouraging people to get involved in group fitness. Like I can't do things individually. Like I'm not going to be motivated.
It's hard.
Yeah. Once I get home,
really hard.
Once I get home, like once I'm on the couch or playing with my daughter or my wife, or like, hanging out with my wife or whatever, like I'm not going to get out there and go run 3 miles or 4 miles. Like, but if you have people to keep you accountable and having a schedule, like schedule is really important. All that stuff makes a big difference.
Yeah. Schedule, accountability, whatever that extra bit you need, because it's way more comfortable on the couch. It's warmer if it's cold out.
There's nothing more I love coming home from work and getting in my sweatpants, and that's sweatpants and a sweatshirt, and not calling it a day, but I'm shut down for a couple hours.
Yeah. And it's even cooler when you put a workout in some point during that day, and then now you like earn the sweatpants,
Yeah, that's the thing I got to get to. I haven't gotten to the morning. I live I got to go to the city every day, but the morning workouts is really kind of that.
They say if you do a morning workout, you're more likely to do it.
Yeah, that kind of 5 to 6 where the sun's not up yet, and
I like sleep, man.
I know. My daughter is I have a 4-year-old daughter. She's a little older now, but in the beginning, those first couple of years, the sleep was definitely more desirable.
Totally. Well, this has been cool. I don't know if you've seen the club, man. Time's just flown by.
That was quick. No, this has been a great experience. And again, I know we've known each other for a while, so
yeah,
we appreciate it. Hopefully this is helpful to people, even if you take one thing away. Like I always kind of think about that when I talk or listen to people talk. If I just get one thing and kind of relating back to where we were before, that's a win.
And, and they're idiots if they didn't get one thing. Cause I got like 3 or 4 pages on here. So it's crazy.
I
Stop
don't think
listening if you didn't get
anyone
one
ever in
thing.
my life has taken 3 pages of notes of what I've ever said, but certainly.
Yeah, man. No, seriously. If you're listening to this and you didn't get one takeaway, then I don't need you listening to this. There are better podcasts for you. But no, man, this has been great. What are some of the ways people can connect with you? You know, the LinkedIn's, the Twitters,
Yeah,
all that stuff.
I think the easiest thing is definitely Twitter, LinkedIn. I think I don't think I know my GY or my Twitter is gwhite415. So all connected, GWHITE, just like the color 415.
Does that mean the 415? Is it the
It's
main?
San Francisco area code. I don't know.
Okay.
I was building it out. I was like, oh, I guess.
Okay. As long as it's not 420, because then we'd have
No,
different.
no,
That's
415.
awesome.
This is the area code for San Francisco. And then LinkedIn for sure. I don't check my LinkedIn email as much as I should, but at least once a week I go in there, and I'm always trying to help out people, or whether it's getting introduced to something at Salesforce or a question, or
Yeah.
mentoring's a little tough, but I'm always happy to do at least something.
Awesome. Well, this has been great, man. Thanks again for coming out here, just sharing your passion for, sales and your passion for, the endurance athletics and all this. It's been a blast.
No, thank you. Thank you for having me. It's cool. I know we talked about earlier. It's cool to do something a little bit different, and this is definitely something different and something I wouldn't mind doing more of.
Yeah, man. Mix it up, right?
Yeah.
Awesome, everybody. Thanks for listening. If you learned something, share this with someone. If share it with your favorite sales rep, share it with your least favorite sales rep. Just get this information out there so we can, and also share with your marketing friends too, because the more we learn about sales, the better marketing we can do. So we'll catch you all later on the next one. This has been the Hardcore Marketing Show. See you guys.